Hello, Internet! Welcome to episode 249 of the Assorted Calibers podcast. The Second Amendment podcast is a little bit for everyone. I'm Weer'd, and with me tonight is the greatest hostess in the entire known universe, Aaron Paulette. How are you doing, Aaron?
Well, I'm obviously no Kaiser Wilhelm II.
That's just... Do we even explain the context of this?
Nope. For the blooper reel, folks.
I just don't know why it made you so grumpy. Besides the fact that you do not have paralysis due to a brachial plexus separation, how are you doing, Aaron?
Waiting for this show to start. That's how I'm feeling. It's what I'm doing.
The show started, Aaron.
I mean, I'm not grumpy, but keep plucking on that nerve. In an effort to move things along, how are you doing, Weer'd?
I'm doing all right, though. As I've been saying, we have entered an abusive relationship with spring here in Massachusetts. It's one day it's cold, one day it's hot, and the last couple of days it's been really, really nice, and I don't trust it. I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. Though I was sharing pictures of ducks and geese that I took from when I went on a little nature walk while my daughter was at school, because I needed some exercise, and I decided it was too nice to work out inside.
It's been unseasonably cool here, and there have been a couple of weeks where it has been cool temperature, and the wind was blowing such that I felt like I was on the Great Plains.
Oh,
so
crazy.
It's very nice, because I don't like it when it gets humid and stinky hot here. But the more we wait, the more I worry that the really nasty weather is being buffered, and we're really gonna get it come summer.
Isn't that the truth? How cool is unseasonably cool right now?
Well, I mean, I don't have hard numbers right in front of me, but I know that when I go for walks at night, it's 70 or high 60s.
Okay. And
the humidity is, it's not like I get all sweaty nasty when I'm walking the dogs. So
let's see. Yeah, it says.
I mean, even if it says it's in the 80s, it's no, the humidity's low. There's a breeze. It's pleasant, and usually by this time because we are now officially in hurricane season. Hurricane season has started. It's unlikely, but it could happen. And usually by then, that's when just the sun comes out and it hates everything, and all the water evaporates, and you walk outside, it's like walking into a sauna trying to breathe through a wet towel, and it's nice. It's spring still, and I wonder how long it's going to last.
And meanwhile, I'm wondering, just before we left for Virginia, my wife had turned off the heat in the house, and then we got home from Virginia, my wife immediately turned the heat back on. So we will see if the heat stays off or the heat goes back on.
I assume your wife is the cold one in the relationship?
Oh, well, no, my wife she has about a 4-degree operating temperature. Anything above that operating temperature, she's hot and we need to turn on the AC. Anything below that operating temperature, we need to turn the heat on. Versus my daughter and I, we're fine. Well, I'll put on a sweater. It's fine. All right, well, shall we move into some unpleasant
Yeah,
news?
I've got nothing on the small talk.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is really some current events, and so again, we're dealing with it. We're still in the pocket of all the information is not out yet, and who knows? Again, with the Nashville shooter, we're still waiting on information on that, and so, I mean, we're still waiting on the Las Vegas shooters information, and that's never going to happen. So either way, this isn't going to be a deep dive. I just wanted to discuss these current events just because I found that they tied together in a very, very interesting way that I thought would work well for our listeners as a form of framing. So to start off, this was on Saturday, I believe. What day was it? Saturday, the 6th. There was a shooting at a mall in Allen, Texas, which is just outside of Dallas. And the killer had an AR-15 and started shooting into people, ended up killing, I believe, 8. I just want to make sure that how they're counting that. But there was a police officer on the scene, I assume doing a routine patrol. I don't think the officer's been named, which is too bad. But as soon as I hear the name of the officer, we will talk about it in a future show. But immediately shot this guy and put him down and put it to an end. It is a sad and tragic story. And of course there is calls for gun control, coming out from that. And, which leads me to, and let me see, is this one the one that I believe this guy had? Yeah, this guy was the one that was briefly in the army and.
Okay. This is where I'm going to step in.
Okay.
So an army official said that he entered the army in 2008 and was terminated 3 months later without completing initial entry training. What this means is he didn't even make it through basic, because basic training is 10 weeks. And I don't know if they mean he made it 9 weeks or less than that. But yeah, this guy could not hack it in basic training and they discharged him. And when you wash out of basic training, they don't characterize it as honorable or dishonorable. It's just, yeah, this isn't a good fit. And so they kicked him out. So, I mean, you could say technically he was in the army because he did the oath of enlistment. But, I mean, I don't even know if this guy was an E1. I really don't know enough to know the ranks of what the recruits are when they're going through basic. You know, he was an E1 at the most, maybe just an E0 if there is such a thing. Mm-hmm. So he was okay. I mentioned before that I was in ROTC in college. I'm about as army as this guy was, arguably a little bit more. So yeah, it's not like he's a proper soldier. He didn't earn that term. He didn't graduate. Yeah, and so I read somewhere that there is talk that essentially for you to wash out a basic like that, it's usually for a medical reason, either physical or mental. And yeah, either you can't make the physical requirements, like you've got asthma, or you're gold bricking, you're not doing the physical tasks, or oh yeah, you're messed up in some way, and you're not a good fit. And given the fact that now this guy is shooting up a mall, I've got to imagine that he probably was had some mental issues. I think that's a safe bet. There has been a bunch of talk, and I have seen a few things, again not confirmed, that this guy is Hispanic. His last name is Garcia. I don't think I'm giving him too much credit by stating an extremely common Hispanic last name. But this guy was, but there is some talk that this guy was Hispanic and a white supremacist. I was a bit surprised by that. And so, but I have seen some of that. There is also some other talk that there might have been some gang affiliation, though I'm not, or wannabe. I don't know. It's still very, very early. It's still very, very early in this to see. And again,
get the true motivation of the killer. If in fact this person's a white supremacist, the cynic in me thinks that we'll have the manifesto probably before I go to bed tonight. And so,
well, I mean, I'm looking at the article here, and law enforcement has stated that they found that the murderer disliked people of color and Jews. And I'm just going to point out that you can be a bigoted asshole and not be a white supremacist. You know, I don't know how you can be Hispanic and be a white supremacist. And just to follow up on what you said before, in addition to the very common name, FBI agents investigated and questioned his family, and they asked for a translator. So it sounds like English wasn't their first language. So this guy may have been a first-generation American. So, you know, racist jerk, absolutely. But not all racist jerks are white supremacists. I just feel the need to clarify that.
I will just say I just posted something in chat. I'll let you search it out, listener, because I'm not going to put this in the show notes just because wait,
is that him?
Allegedly. And so what there's a photograph circulating of allegedly the shooter. Again, it's the picture has the head cropped off, so it but they have a on their what is that? That's their left shoulder is
no, it's on their right bicep. They have the SS lightning bolts.
Yep.
And on their left pectoral they have the swastika.
Correct. And so, yeah,
okay. I may need to revise my thinking then.
Yeah, I was shocked to see that. Like, I literally saw this like 2 hours ago, and have not had a chance to track down how valid.
I mean, yeah, as you say, we don't know if that's him. But if that's him, you know, I mean, if you're wearing the Nazi symbols, I have no problem calling you a Nazi.
Mm-hmm.
So there you go. Wow.
So again, time will tell. This is all just kind of late breaking news, and so take everything with a grain of salt. Verify everything independently. But that is, it is. Aaron, you are correct. I have known. I have known black people who hate Jews. I mean, obviously there's the whole Kanye West thing going on there. That doesn't take, you don't have to be a white supremacist to hold those certain values. But, the swastika and the SS runes are pretty telling if that is in fact him. So, interesting take, especially interesting take on, I wonder how the SS would have seen this guy in the 30s in Germany.
A useful idiot.
Mm-hmm. I mean, with emphasis on the idiot. But either way,
it's like, okay, yeah, we'll throw you up against, you'll be the first wave, and if you die, okay, and if you kill other, our enemies, okay, we'll deal with you later.
Yes. Either way, I will say that if you take the time to track down the images of this guy's tattoo, take a little extra second and track down the images of him as he got laid out by the cop, just because, you know what, it is a fitting end to a jerk who both did this to innocent people and held these beliefs. So, yeah. But one thing that I wanted to move on to talk about is, of course, everybody's talking about this guy and the fact that he had an AR-15 rifle, and we need to ban these guns and all that. Meanwhile, in Brownsville, Texas, the very next day, 8 people were also killed, were also killed, but in this case, it was a person was driving a Range Rover and saw a bunch of people outside of a migrant shelter. So the idea being that these people were recent immigrants or migrant workers into the state of Texas, and ran them all over, and again killed 8. I don't know how many people were injured. I have seen some bystanders took videos of the aftermath, and it was horrific.
Well, the article says more than 10 were injured.
Yeah. And so...
And I do want to point out that the assailant, who we're also not going to name, also has a very common Hispanic last name.
Mm-hmm.
And it's... I don't know why I find this weird, because, I, a white person... white people kill other white people all the time. I don't think anything strange about it because, people are jerks. Why I should find it odd that a Hispanic man tried to kill other Hispanic people, I don't know why I find that strange, but I do.
Yeah, no, I actually had a very similar reaction, especially the angle on all the indications appear that these people are either recent immigrants or migrant workers and or illegal aliens. I don't know what to say, but the potential that these people are not U.S. citizens that were being run down does lead you to think that there would be a racial disparity in there somewhere. But also, as a thing to point out, when you look at crime numbers, as a general rule, if a person of a certain race is killed, odds are very, very good that the person who killed them is the exact same race as them. And it goes across the board. Hispanics are more likely to be murdered by other Hispanics. Whites are more likely to be murdered by other whites. Blacks are more likely to be murdered by other blacks. And then a situation like this where, again, just the people just got bowled over, while they were waiting for a bus is just absolutely horrific. But you're not seeing any calls on banning Range Rovers, especially since Range Rovers tend to be the hoity-toity type people's SUV. And so, yeah, the fact that it was the exact same body count with not a quote unquote weapon of war. But of course, this is not going to have the same level of political backlash. Also, another thing to say with this guy had an extensive criminal record. Not anything too bad. A lot of it appears to be he was really just kind of a misfit and a bad behavior. The only violent charges are like assaulting a police officer, which could very well just mean that they were just trying to arrest him for, again, he had like a lot of like driving without a license and driving while intoxicated charges, and having that be and then having him not go easily into the cuffs is an easy way to pick up some assault charges. But either way, this guy had an extensive criminal record. He was known to police, and here he was driving around. So there is a common thread, and it's not guns.
And before people say something, it's not Hispanic men either.
No. Because I wanted to bring up another story, and this happened on Thursday, and there was a school shooting, and I believe nine people were killed in this school shooting, and the killer did not have an AR-15. The killer used a handgun. The key point that I'm not putting in here is this was in Serbia. This was in Belgrade. And so, I actually meant to go look up the gun laws in Serbia.
Oh, I have those handy.
Beautiful.
What do you want to know?
Yes, please. Just the bullet points. What do you need to get a gun? What guns can you get?
Okay. So you need to provide a reason for owning a gun. Mainly, it's for hunting and sport shooting. In order to get a carry permit, you have to prove threat of life, and it's very difficult to get. Long guns are shell issue. Handguns, just to buy, it requires a license. And hang on, there's something about registration. Yeah, you do have to register them. I believe you have to register all of them. People over 18 may own firearms with a permit, which is denied to those with a criminal history, mental disorder, or history of alcohol or illegal substance abuse. There's a thorough background check with police having the final decision, and so it sounds like the good character clause. Firearms must be stored in a designated gun cabinet and may be confiscated by police if the owner is found irresponsible. It doesn't outright say that the police show up to do inspections, but I wouldn't be surprised. But yeah, just having a permit to own a firearm doesn't allow you to carry it anywhere outside the home. And if you're transporting it like to the range to go hunting or whatever, it has to be unloaded.
And I will note that this killer has not been named, so therefore I don't have to avoid their name, nor are you going to stumble upon it by reading the show notes. But
I want to point out that the killer was a 13-year-old boy.
Correct. That's the reason why they have not been named, is that they are 13 years old, and it seems like the age of 14 is the first year where they will actually start charging. I don't know if they have juvenile offensives or if they'll charge them as an adult at 14 or older. But this person took the guns from their father. The father is also in custody right now, pending the investigation on whether or not he should be held responsible for the fact that his son brought at least two of his firearms. Yeah, two firearms into a school.
Well, the not that I'm agreeing with this here, but the logic being is that the father, any gun owner has to keep their guns secured in a safe. Mm-hmm. And a 13-year-old was able to defeat the security measures and load several magazines worth of ammunition and take them and a pistol to school. So I think that they're getting ready to make a negligence case and possibly, since they can't prosecute the boy, prosecute the father for these murders. Something else that jumped out at me, and I don't have a greater point to make, is that the majority of the children killed were girls. 7 girls and 1 boy were killed. And then a further 6 children, they don't give their sexes, and 1 teacher have been hospitalized. Now, it may just have been coincidence, but I do wonder, and literally that's all I'm doing is idle thoughts, was he upset at, because 13, you're really too young to be dating, but you're going through puberty and you're figuring out, I don't know, what was he mocked by the girls at school? It seems odd because usually from what I have observed of high school drama is that the boys terrorize other boys and girls terrorize other girls. And it's really, really rare for there to be cross-sex harassment like that. And so it might be coincidence, but if he did preferentially target girls, what's going on? I don't expect that to be answered, but that's something that really jumped out at me as being odd.
Well, I will note that the Isla Vista killer in California, the famous incel killer, as he's most frequently known as, he specifically targeted women as a essentially retaliation for his sexual frustrations. So
yes, but how old was he?
He was in his 20s.
See, again, not a justification, but that I can at least understand that. He's 20. He's not having any luck with getting laid. He's frustrated. 13-year-old boys shouldn't be frustrated like that. So I don't know.
Yeah, he was 22 years old.
Yes,
Yep.
Oh, I thought you were correcting me about the 13-year-old.
Nope,
okay.
totally. But
okay.
Yeah, and so one thing I wanted to point out was it's very clear that Serbia does not have a lot of the systems that we have in place in the United States, and this absolutely worked out for their detriment, is it appears that the first thing that he did was came on campus and shot the security guard. And so the security guard was the only armed person to protect the kids, and they were a sitting duck because the killer chose the time and place, and they just had to react. And it's no shame that they weren't able to react fast enough, and it's unfortunate. But it also appears that the killer moved from classroom to classroom. But also it appears that after they shot the 9 people, killed the 9 people, and I don't know about the injuries, if the people that were rushed to the hospital were shot or just otherwise injured trying to escape or things like that, broken glass. But he left went out into the schoolyard, unloaded his gun and dropped his gun down, and then called the police himself and waited until he was arrested, which has absolutely happened in the past, but it just seems very strange. Whether, I don't know if he ran out of ammunition or had a specific.
Well, I mean,
target.
considering that they said he specifically unloaded the gun, it sounded like he hadn't run out of ammo.
Well, it just the quote I'm reading here is he left the classroom, went out into the schoolyard, releasing the magazine from the weapon, throwing it down on the steps, and then the suspect called the police himself and waited until he was arrested in the yard.
Well, yeah, so, it's troublingly vague.
Yeah, so he certainly dumped the magazine from the pistol. Whether or not he was dumping an empty magazine from an empty pistol with the slide locked back, or dumped the magazine from a loaded gun and just was clearing the weapon, is unknown. Of course, this is also, I mean, there's a whole bunch of these quotes have a whole bunch of weird stuff in there. Like I heard, like there was one, I don't know if it's in this article, was saying that he brought several loaded frames with him, which I assume.
Well, I imagine that's just a strange translation of magazine.
Yeah, but what I'm trying to say is that they don't speak English in Serbia as their primary language. So the fact that there's going to be some stuff lost in translation is very plausible. But the point that I wanted to make on this is that, again, this is not me belittling anybody who has lost lives in this. I am not making any sort of judgment call. These are all horrific incidents. But that is also the point to make, is that many of the people on the prohibitionist side are going to make a difference. You probably didn't hear about the Serbian attack. I hadn't heard about it. The friend of the show with a common name actually sent me this story. So if it wasn't for somebody sending me this story, I don't think I would have picked it up, because this is the only place I've heard about this. And so you have a story in Serbia where they have considerably tighter. I mean, sounds like they've got since you can get a concealed carry permit, you can own semi-auto handguns.
No. I mean, you can theoretically get a concealed carry permit, but it's very, very hard. It's practically impossible.
Yes, but what I'm just pointing out but you can get one is better than many countries, and the fact that that civilians can own a semi-auto pistol is better than many countries in Europe and the rest of the world, and so it is lax for Europe, but at the same time is strict for California or Massachusetts. And so and yet here we are having a deadly mass shooting, as deadly as a crazy person with an AR-15 going into a shopping mall. So, and then to tie it all together, a man with a car killed just as many people. So again, the common thread here is not race, as you pointed out wonderfully, Aaron. This is not an issue of race. This is not an issue of weapons. This is not an issue of culture. This is an issue of mental health and just general security. again, my heart is broken for the people in Serbia, because if they had a similar lockdown system that I think at this point pretty much all American schools have, we certainly saw, even with Nashville, with their poorly designed doors that allowed the killer just to enter, they still were locked down, and the killer just did not have access to that many students. And again, we still don't know all the details on it, but it would be interesting to know how the people that were killed in Nashville did cross paths with the killer. Were they people who were out wandering in the halls and got locked out because of the lockdown, which is absolutely something that happens. And it's one of those things that unfortunately teachers are trained on if a kid is out in the hall using the bathroom and the school goes on lockdown, even if that kid starts knocking on the door, you aren't to let them in, because the killer could be using that to their advantage as a way to breach the security. But again, the fact that this killer, it sounds like from all the reports, was accessing multiple rooms to seek out the targets they were looking for. And again, if they had such a simple lockdown that as soon as the first shots fired, the school could be locked down, and now suddenly the doors are all shut and locked and they can't get to, lives probably could have been saved.
I thought it was very interesting that, well, in the wake of tragedies like this, blame is always going to be assessed, and sometimes it's warranted, sometimes it's not. And I thought it was very interesting in this case that the education minister didn't blame the gun, but instead blamed, and I'm just going to quote here, the cancerous, pernicious influence of internet video games of so-called Western values. And so, first of all, we all heard the video game blame before. Mm-hmm. There was that lawyer in the late 90s, early 2000s who wanted to sue every single video game manufacturer because he claimed that was turning people into murderers. But this made me think of things, and I'm going to link 2 videos in the show notes. I don't think we really need to discuss them, although Weer'd, if you want to, we can. I just thought that they were very interesting. One of them is a video from Reason TV, and these are both short videos. This one is the longest. It's almost like 13 minutes long, and it's an analysis of how, it asks the question, are the media making mass shootings worse? And the producers of this video believe so. And it's a very thoughtful analysis of how the media is making these shootings worse. And, it seems that we've got these shootings coming in increasing frequency. And so I agree with this. It's been proven that suicide clusters are real. Why wouldn't mass shooting clusters also be real? And so this video talks about things that can be done to de-glamorize and disincentivize mass shootings. And so I really recommend people watch that. There's also another video. It's 2 minutes, 11 seconds long. And it's got the very dry title of The Psychology Behind School Shootings. And what I thought was interesting about this video is that we hear a lot from the media that the shooter was known to authorities, be it the police, the school staff, the school students. There was someone who knew what was going on, that the kid had problems, and they decided that they wouldn't do anything because they didn't want to ruin the child's life. And what this particular person, I believe it's Gavin DeBecker, is speaking about, and he makes the point that a lot of the time, these children are committing these horrific crimes because they feel ignored, and this will get them attention. And his analysis, which I don't know if I agree with it 100%, but I don't disagree with it. I think it has merit and it should be investigated, is that instead of ignoring the problem because we don't want to ruin the child's life. How about we address the problem and give them attention? It's lack of attention that is causing a lot of these problems. And so, yes, let's intervene. Yes, let's get them help. But most of all, let's show them that we care. Worst case scenario, we waste some time and money on someone who would do it anyway. Best case scenario, and I think we'll have more of those than the worst case, is that we can intervene and get these kids help, or at the very, very least, nip a school shooting before it happens. And so I really want our listeners to watch these two videos. Heck, you can just listen to them. There's really not a whole lot to see. Just, when you're driving to work or whatever, just listen to them, and I think you'll find them very interesting.
No, I agree, especially that bit about the fact that being ignored is a huge factor in these killers and what's happening to them, and it really is telling, because it seems so many of them are left by the wayside. They have family issues and things like that, and it could very well be that the intervention that the schools or the law enforcement could do might actually not only protect all of us, because one thing that I've said a million times is, what would happen if, when the killer at Parkland, he was arrested, 30 times, was it? So it's just
I don't remember the number, but it was a lot. And he was known not only to local police, but to, I think, FBI.
Absolutely. But if the local, I don't think the FBI ever arrested him. The FBI was contacted by family, friends, and neighbors about his problem, and by him himself. He actually contacted them and actually informed that he was going to shoot up the school, and the FBI did nothing. And this is the reason why the Parkland families sued the FBI and won a settlement from the FBI. But if the local police that kept responding to these domestic violence situations between him and his mother, if he had been charged with any of those, he might have gotten some, court ordered intervention. He might have gotten some, he would have been a prohibited person, and he bought his guns legally. And so there's any number of factors here that would have moved some pieces in the way of that shooting happening. But also, the takeaway I got from this video was that possibly also the not being ignored by society the way he was, and really kind of given a hands-off approach. Again, he was banned from bringing a bag on school grounds, but he wasn't expelled from the school. He was allowed to still come, but they were taking precautions because I think they were concerned that he was going to be violent. And so all of the, all of these factors could have led to his alienation, and the idea that taking some intervention would have potentially gotten him off of this step. It's just an interesting thought experiment, and thank you for bringing up those videos, Aaron. I think that's absolutely great. I will also note that I have in the show notes one of these crime rates by state graphs that are just using the FBI data and looking at violent crime in each of the states. And it notes that, again, this has the same, according to this, how this one goes through. This is using 2023 numbers. New Hampshire is number 1. Massachusetts is number 2, which is a little higher than some of the previous ones that I've used for my audio fisks. Then there's Maine, then Idaho, then New Jersey, then Vermont, Rhode Island, Virginia, West Virginia, New York. So as you're seeing, there's a smattering of gun-friendly states, including New Hampshire, which I rank as the most gun-friendly state in the United States. As the safest place, But then Massachusetts, they list as number 2. New Jersey's always ranked very, very high. And Massachusetts and New Jersey are both well known for being extremely anti-gun and very, very hard on gun owners. And so all of these, the fact that this is all over the place shows you that guns really aren't the key factor. There's something else in these numbers that are why violent crime happens. So the idea that you could ban your way out of this. Maine and New Hampshire are extremely safe places and they have no bans in place. So clearly the fact that you allow people high capacity magazines and rifles with scary features and permitless carry and open carry or concealed carry, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And these cause violence. Well, not in these states. And then you have states like, California and Maryland and all of that DC that have extremely high gun violence rates or just violent crime rates in general. And at the same time, they also have extremely restrictive laws. So
yeah, I did want to point out that this is not a violent crime rate. This is just crime rate.
Okay. That might explain why the numbers are so off. I should have been a little bit more cautious on that, but still I'll let it stand because it's an interesting experiment to look at. And the numbers aren't terribly inconsistent with the other numbers that I've looked at. So yeah, the answer in the coming days, there's going to be more and more call specifically for the Allen, Texas mall shooter as a means for, Joe Biden has been talking about banning AR-15s every chance he can get. And he's been speaking up and essentially blaming the guns every time an event like this happens. But I wanted to juxtapose that in 5 days, we had 4 days, we had 3 shootings that all had very, very similar death tolls, and the circumstances around them were drastically different. And so the idea that we can ban our way out of this is purely ridiculous. So now shifting gears slightly, is still keeping in the vein of politics. I had heard a story coming out of the state of North Carolina, and in this case, it was a story about the potential demise, we shall see, of constitutional carry in the state of North Carolina. So I sat down with John Richardson of No Lawyers, Only Guns and Money to get his take on it, because he's been following it closely. I am pleased to welcome to the Assorted Calibers podcast a longtime friend, Mr. John Richardson. How you doing, John?
I'm doing fine, Weer'd.
All right. Well, you know what? I'm bringing you on because you, like Sean Sarantino, are a resident of the great state of North Carolina, and you know my feelings about the state of North Carolina.
Absolutely.
And I was told that you had been following this latest bill on constitutional carry, and I've heard a lot of drama around it, and I thought it would be better than, rather than me speculate, I'll go to a boots on the ground reporter.
Well, I appreciate that. And yes, there has been a lot of drama. And I guess the best place to do is start with the timeline. The bill was introduced in late February by a representative from Eastern North Carolina, Keith Kidwell. He's the deputy majority whip, so he's got some oomph behind him. And it was originally called the North Carolina Constitutional Carry Act. Now, we already do have open carry as a constitutional right. This would allow us to have permitless concealed carry. So the bill just kind of hangs around, and we start gathering petitions trying to push it forward. And come Tuesday of this week, May 2nd, it finally got a hearing in the House Judiciary 2 Committee. It got passed out of it with a 7-4 vote. It goes to the Rules Committee, which it had to do before it could go to the floor. That happened on Wednesday morning, And then on Wednesday afternoon, it was supposed to have been voted on. They had like 55 bills that they were voting on. And I'm watching it. It's like, okay, who's for this? Okay. First reading, second reading, we're done. In and out. Unless it was talking about abortion or transgender surgery, whatever, then it took some more time. But most bills were 3 to 4 minutes in and out. And the reason they were pushing to have so many bills through it at the same time is the North Carolina General Assembly has what's called a crossover deadline. A bill had to pass one house or the other by the crossover deadline unless it was a money bill to be considered by the other house for the rest of the session. So we were rushing to get it done by May 4th, the crossover deadline. So it's on the schedule. It's up for a vote. And then all of a sudden, it gets withdrawn. Now, I will say along the way, to get it moving, the speaker said, well, I don't think we have enough support. Law enforcement is, raising some issues. We have some wavering Republicans. I want to keep a training requirement. We didn't want it, but we knew that if we wanted the bill to keep moving, we had to accept it. It could be online training. It could be from the NRA, USCCA, from law enforcement, whatever. It wasn't really specified, but it could get the bill moving, and potential was we could always get rid of it once it got to the Senate. So at the last moment, the bill, literally about 7:30 on Wednesday night, the bill is withdrawn. And at the same time, it comes out that the NRA says, we object to this bill because it has a training requirement, and we can't compromise on that. Backing up a little, they had not testified about the bill. They had not sent out any notice about the bill, even when it was a clean bill. They had not done anything until the very last moment. Their representative, a guy named DJ Spiker, covers North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, Maryland. So, yeah, he doesn't necessarily know North Carolina that well. The groups pushing it were Grassroots North Carolina, which is a state-level, unaffiliated with any other organization, gun rights group, and GOA, Gun Owners of America. So the bill is not officially dead now. The sponsor, Keith Kidwell, is going to try to add some sort of fiscal note to it to keep it alive, but I'm not altogether hopeful. We'll just leave it at that.
I mean, that is a real bummer, and that's kind of a common problem that I think we have with a lot of things within, really anything, but especially in the Second Amendment aspect of it, because I totally agree. I am against training requirements for anything, and I will point out the fact that, hey, as someone who lives here in New England, we've got training requirements all over the map, from Vermont, which has always been since it's been a state, a constitutional carry state with no requirement of any sort required to open or conceal carry. I grew up in Maine, where it was what I considered the standard concealed carry model, where essentially NRA basic pistol or equivalent, and then it's essentially a shall issue state. But then just to the south is New Hampshire, where they had permanent requiring until very recently, but no training requirement. And again, there's no discernible difference between any of these states as far as their crime rates go, and especially the type of crimes that would be precluded on training, such as either people falsely claiming self-defense or people accidentally harming themselves or others, which is, of course, negligent negligible in this country.
Well, and I agree with you. And we were not really in favor of the training requirement, but it was minimal. And I'll be honest with you, there is no penalty for not doing the training. It just said you needed training. It didn't say, and it was training in self-defense law. or the use of deadly force. It wasn't how to shoot. It wasn't a marksmanship test. It was just, you need to know North Carolina law so that you're not screwed. There was that added to the bill, but we also reduced the age for carry from 21 to 18. It got rid of the fingerprinting. It got rid of the $85 cost to get a permit every 5 years. Got rid of the application. So it got rid of most everything except for the training. Now, the North Carolina Sheriff's Association did come out against the bill. They testified against it. And their objection was law enforcement would not know if the person they were approaching was legal to carry a concealed weapon. Okay. You're stopping a car in North Carolina. Yeah, that should probably pop up that if you have a carry permit or not. But if you were from Massachusetts or Maine or New Hampshire, they would not know. If they were just walking up to you on the street, a cop would not know whether you were carrying or not. So it was kind of specious. Really, I think what the Sheriff's Association was upset about was they were losing $85 every 5 years. It was money for them. So,
and may I add to it, just for people that aren't familiar with North Carolina laws, North Carolina also has full reciprocity. If you have a concealed carry permit in your state of residence, you also now have a concealed carry permit that is recognized by North Carolina. So the fact that someone from another state might be driving and carrying through North Carolina is not unreasonable at all.
No, not unreasonable at all. And there was if you want to call it, as the gun banners always use, there's a loophole. Well, the loophole was that if you had a permit, a non-resident permit from a state that didn't even require training, it was still going to be good in North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
So as for me, I would be always wanting to have my carry permit, both because of travel and because when I don't go through a NICS check. You just show in North Carolina, I go to buy something, I fill out the 4473, and that's it. They usually Xerox my driver's license, my carry permit, and I'm good to go. So I guess what really bugs me is that the NRA has this attitude that if they didn't invent it, it can't be any good. And if they invented it, they would have supported it full hog, full on. But since they were not affiliated with it, I'm not sure if they were upset about the training requirement or just wanted to stick it to grassroots in North Carolina. There's not always been good relationships between the two. We'll just leave it at that.
I only can imagine the gulf is growing larger with all the scandals going on in the NRA currently.
Yeah, and I will say virtually all the leadership that I know of grassroots North Carolina are life members of the NRA. And they go back years working for gun rights. The organization started to push our shall issue concealed carry permit back in 1994. And then it's just kind of grown from there. So where we go from here, the hope is that the sponsor can add something that will get it so that it'll have a fiscal note and be able to move on to the Senate and can be voted on in the House. But for me, the downside of it is, who do you see just crowing loudly, "Oh, we have stopped this evil, dangerous bill"? North Carolinians Against Gun Violence, Giffords, the whole Moms Demand Action group. And the sponsor of the bill said the committee got virtually no calls, no emails. They testified, one person testified. That was it. And so they're claiming credit for stopping it. And it says, "Thank you, you did this." Like, no, they didn't. I hate to say it, the NRA did it. But I just don't like giving any more power to our enemies or the enemies of our civil rights.
Yeah. Well, I would say one thing I think we all need to think of as gun owners is the tactics of our enemies as the gun prohibitionists, in that they will take any port in the storm. They will take any any restriction is better than no restriction. I mean, obviously we had, back during the Obama administration, the one where, retirees that collected Social Security through a designated payee were deemed mentally unfit and therefore would fail that. I mean, the number of people affected by that, at least on a per capita level, is almost nothing. But again, this was a lauded action because any little step, I mean, the whole assault weapons ban was done when the AR-15 was a very, very expensive, very, very low production gun, and AKs and other type guns were rare imports, and there already were import restrictions. And so it really wasn't affecting too many people. And it really was the interest that was generated by the ban that started the situation where now every safe has an AR-15 in it. And so I think we to be very, very cautious about getting too uptight about the minutia of something, so long as it doesn't have aspects in it that will get people in legitimate trouble, such as, heavy gun-free zone, tactics,
exactly,
or things like that that could very easily put honest people in jail. Any move in the right direction is something that you can always bring up to later dates.
I agree. I mean, politics is the art of the possible, not of the perfect. I mean, perfect is the enemy of the possible. Mm-hmm. We were moving it forward, and that was the key. As it is now, it may take us another 2 years before we can bring it up again. I was hoping we were going to be the 28th state with permitless carry. South Carolina still has got a chance. I'm just not holding out much hope for North Carolina.
Well, as I guess I'll finish us off on a positive note, is I will note that just getting it up through and into the committee and getting it this close is a good sign, as well as, saying on anything that's moving the ball. You guys just lost your Jim Crow era pistol purchase permit, and
yes, we did.
You have been submitting bills for as long as I've been in the gun rights movement and have been aware of North Carolina gun laws. You guys have been pushing it, and so it's just a question of just keep going, and one of these times we're going to succeed, because this is all on the side of good. We've proven it with all the states that have adopted constitutional carry, and there's no sky falling. There's no murders over parking spaces, et cetera, et cetera. We've been well past Jim Crow. So the idea of the pistol purchase permits and all of their intention of disarming people of specific ethnicities, is now gone by the wayside. And of course, also I got to say, I always, as someone who hopes to someday be a resident of North Carolina, I was always disheartened by your ban on carrying firearms into any establishment that serves alcoholic beverages, because I enjoy going to a restaurant, and whether I'm having a drink or not shouldn't be shouldn't be relevant to whether I'm carrying a gun.
Well, you can go into restaurants now that does serve alcohol. Mm-hmm. We got that through. You just can't drink.
Yep, and that is not a problem at all. That is a choice that you can make. You can be armed or you can have a beverage, and I've got no problem with that. And I'm glad you guys got that through. And so, all I'm saying is, you mentioned the NRA rep that covers, you said Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina, and South Carolina.
Exactly.
I will say I am totally ignorant on South Carolina's gun laws, but I will say for a fact that Maryland is an anti-gun state that continues to be anti-gun. Virginia is a pro-gun state that's getting a lot of traction from the anti-gunners, but yep. North Carolina was a state that had a lot of crappy gun laws that has been getting better and better over the years, and you guys have been doing a wonderful job. So there's a lot of differences between those three states, and like I said, I really haven't been following South Carolina one way or the other. hopefully they will get constitutional carry. But
well, I don't think they even had open carry.
Mm-hmm.
Though now I think you have open carry in South Carolina if you have a carry permit. Whereas in North Carolina, we had it open carry since 1922.
Oh, nice. Well, either way, best wishes to you, and
Thank you.
We'll reach out if there's any new news, and feel free to contact me if I don't hear it, if you don't think I've heard about it yet. But I'd love to hear what's going on in the great state of North Carolina, because, like I said, you guys have really been doing a good job at moving the ball down the field, and I don't doubt that that'll continue to happen.
Well, I do appreciate it, and if people want to know more, they can go to my blog. No Lawyers, Only Guns and Money. Just go to onlygunsandmoney.com. You can read it. I have links to everything. I mean, every story I do has got multiple links. So read the bill yourself.
Well, thank you. And of course, you can also hear John on the Polite Society podcast. So you want another pod in your ear? That is an absolute good one. I highly recommend it.
So I do appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you so much, John.
So you remember, I don't know, a week or two ago where I was like having mixed feelings about the survival of the NRA?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm done now. If they're gonna kill this, and I have to agree with his assessment, it wasn't over. We refused to compromise over training requirements because, as he said, there was no teeth to the training requirement, and, well, as we all know, the NRA compromises all the dang time. No, this is pretty obvious that this was a case of, well, we didn't think of it, so we don't want it to pass. And yeah, at this point, I'm just completely done with them. I mean, they helped the gun prohibitionists. This is not just an own goal. This is, I don't know, sabotage. If I weren't already not giving the NRA money, I would stop. I don't know any way for me to continue to hurt them. But, I'm just so upset at them over this.
I will say the other day, I thought they were done doing this. I got a donation because, of course, I'm a Life member, so I'm still going to be getting the emails. I see no reason to rescind my membership. It doesn't do me any good to get rid of my membership from the NRA. And
I completely agree. I mean, you've already paid for it.
Correct.
You might as well stick around and vote.
Yep. And although, honestly speaking, for the last year's ballot was the first time I got the ballot and didn't vote, just because I don't see a point anymore. It seems like there's no way we're going to vote our way out of this. In my opinion. So I just didn't see a point on researching who might be the most anti-Wayne LaPierre and most reform-oriented person, because, again, the board is already stacked in favor of this swamp that we have right now. But either way, I got one of the junk mail begging cards that was, can we please, trust your donation. We'll give you this fine gift for a donation of X value or all of that. And I'll tell you right now, I wrote "Remove Wayne LaPierre" on it in big Sharpie marker in such a way as to make it not impossible to miss, but also in such a way that they could very easily read my name and membership number on the slip. And then I put it back in the prepaid mailer and sent it back out, because I can't give the NRA any less money now. But I sure can send them back prepaid mailers so that it'll take money away.
Do you think that the Firearms Museum has been gutted to pay for Wayne's legal fees yet? I mean, we know it's going to happen. It's just, do you think it's already happened?
I mean, I don't think it has already happened, because I think we would have gotten word, because a lot of those pieces are very, very well. I mean, they'll probably actually start with like the back rooms and the guns that are not on display because they are not of peak significance and easily identifiable. But we will we will see. And it also all depends on some of the circumstances on what they're there. Some of them may be illegal for the NRA to sell because they were given under the statement of, if the NRA doesn't need these guns anymore, they would be returned to the owner or their estate.
You think that's going to stop them?
I have no idea. I have no idea. I mean, I would not be surprised if they attempted to sell, say, some of Tom Selleck's donations, for big bank money, and Tom Selleck ended up speaking out and saying, "No, I said you could display those, and if you didn't want them, I'd take them back." So I don't know. But I certainly haven't seen enough rumblings from the various auction sites to get the impression that the NRA has completely gutted the collection. But at the same time, I guarantee they've got like a bunch of very unremarkable guns that have been donated with. I mean, I've heard that just some people just, when they died, all of their guns just went to the NRA museum. And even then, the NRA museum was allowed to sell off some of those guns in order to fund the museum itself. So, but I'm sure there's a bunch of guns in the back room that don't go on display because they're not of that much significance that no one would ever have any idea of where they were coming from if they went to an auction site. But one other thing I wanted to point out was, of course, John was talking about the fact that they were adding this training requirement to the bill just as a way to keep the ball moving. And again, I don't think I got a chance to complete my thought because we got talking so much, but I'm opposed to training requirements. There's no point in them, but also at the same time, I've got no problem following the game of the anti-gunners and saying, like, look, if we can move the ball down the field, I'll take any port in the storm. And I just wanted to get your comment because this reminds me very much of some of your misgivings on the Florida constitutional carry.
Mm-hmm.
And I will just say that the ball's moving in the right direction in Florida, and there's always next time that you can go to improve it.
Mm-hmm.
So here's hoping to North Carolina. Hopefully we'll be hearing from John again soon that maybe they managed to put some funding bills on it to keep it alive for a little bit longer so it doesn't just die and then they have to wait till the next session to reintroduce it. And who knows, there'll probably be an election in between then. So the political boundaries could change. But either way, best wishes to all the people in North Carolina. This is discouraging news, but you guys should still be proud on what you've been doing in that state because, like I said, when I first started following gun laws, I realized that North Carolina was one of those states that is a gun-friendly state, but it's got a whole bunch of crappy gun laws. And every year, less and less of those gun laws are existing. So good on you, North Carolina, and here's hoping you get your constitutional carry sometime soon.
Now on a lighter note, David talks about Kunani, and if you think that's something dirty, then y'all need Tisas.
Hi, and welcome to Gun Lovers and Other Strangers. Recently, the store where I work was visited by industry reps from the Turkish manufacturer Tisas. So in this episode, I'd like to talk about the history of Tisas and the products they currently offer. Tisas was established in 1993 in the northeastern Turkish city of Trabzon on the Black Sea coast. In the late 1990s, Tisas also opened a district office in the Turkish capital of Ankara to help with government contracts and international sales. As of 2023, Tisas is celebrating 30 years in the firearms business. Their first product was a pistol, the Faith 13, a licensed copy of the Beretta Model 84. Like the original, the Faith 13 holds, as the name implies, 13 plus 1 rounds of .380 ACP, and most parts are interchangeable between the two handguns. The Faith 13 is still listed on the Tisas website with an MSRP of $399. A few years later, Tisas introduced the Kunani series of pistols. These were alloy-framed Browning-style tilt-barrel locked-breech handguns chambered in 9x19 and holding 15 plus 1 rounds. With a 4.3-inch barrel, The Kunani was considered a compact pistol, and the design was soon followed by the service-sized Zigana model with a 5-inch barrel. The Zigana is also produced under license in Malaysia, and unlicensed copies are made in Pakistan. These pistols were imported into the United States under the FS9 model name. While incorporating features of a variety of other handguns, the Kunani and Zigana were unique Turkish designs and were well received by the Turkish military as well as law enforcement and private security companies. More recently, the Kunani and Zigana have been supplanted by the polymer-frame striker-fired PX9 pistols. An interesting aspect of the PX9 is they are designed to utilize SIG P226 pattern magazines. This removes one of the major consumer concerns when buying a new auto pistol, as 226 magazines are relatively plentiful on the commercial market. In an attempt to expand their foothold in the US market, Tisas introduced a line of 1911 clones based on the classic Colt Series 70 design. As a particular fan of the 1911, I spent some time at their display examining the samples they'd brought. The ones I handled at the store had very nice fit and finish, as well as the expected crisp and clean 1911 single-action trigger. In fact, the Tisas Stingray and Devil Ray models could almost pass for a budget version of one of the Wilson combat handguns with an Ed Brown-style bobtail, right down to the Starburst G10 grips. However, with MSRPs of $619 and $579 respectively, they are much easier on the pocketbook. Speaking of grips, according to the company representatives, all the wood grips are locally sourced Turkish walnut. Some of the models come with G10 grips in a variety of color combinations. However, with those, the reps weren't sure if they were all made in-house or if some were purchased from another manufacturer. Tisas also produces the ZPT-556 and ZPT-762 line of rifles. However, being select fire, they aren't commercially available in the United States at this time. The Tisas family of handguns are imported into the U.S. by SDS Imports, who also handle Tokarev USA pump and semi-auto shotguns, Spandau Arms over and under sporting shotguns, and Military Armament Corps retro and tactical pistols and shotguns. By the way, I did ask, and some of the tactical shotguns are able to mount bayonets. And who doesn't like that? Even though it's not really in my budget right now, purchasing one of the Tisas 1911s, such as a Stingray or Devil Ray, has been added to my short list of acquisitions. If any of our listeners get a chance, be sure to check them out.
Light, easy to handle, effective. The handgun is the ideal weapon for both defensive and offensive close-quarter man-to-man combat fighting.
That about wraps up this segment. If you have any questions for me or suggestions for future segments or a comment on a past segment, please post them on the Assorted Calibers Podcast Facebook or MeWe pages, and Aaron or Weer'd will make sure I see them. I'm also a contributor on the Blue Collar Prepping blog, which can be found at bluecollarprepping.blogspot.com. We're always looking for people interested in submitting posts to the blog, so please check out the site. Finally, I'm a published author, and books with my stories can be found on Amazon under the name Brena Bock, that's BRENABOCK. I'm also in anthologies published under my actual name. Look for David Bock on Amazon, just not the guy who writes the computer books. That's all for now. Thanks for listening. I'm David, and this is Gun Lovers and Other Strangers.
So I do want to point out that, David has a little bit of dyslexia, and this is a foreign language. One of the pistols he referenced is not Faith. It is, in fact, Fatih, and that is Turkish for conqueror.
It's got all the letters in the right spot.
I'm not entirely sure if Tisas is the actual pronunciation, but I went with it for the joke. Mm-hmm. So just be warned. The pronunciation may be different than what he said, but I trust the rest of his info.
Yeah,
just not that.
And I'm going to say, while I generally prefer guns domestically made by Americans who share my values, I'll just leave it at that. I do love that Tisas is making quality guns at very reasonable prices, because let me just say that, yeah, there's a lot of people out there that might be looking for more inexpensive solutions towards their gun owning problems. And so the various countries that are able to bring us inexpensive guns, but inexpensive guns that aren't compromising on quality, I'm all for it.
So I've never heard of Tisas before. I have heard of Canik, which is another Turkish gun manufacturer.
Mm-hmm.
And if I recall correctly, and I may not, don't they also make a 1911 clone?
Not Canik or Janik. It is
Janik? It's spelled.
Yes, but and I
okay.
And I have no idea how they get it there, but yeah, there's a thing with Turkish where they have a C in it and it sounds like a J, or at least approximates a J to an American tongue. The leader of the left wing group, the Young Turks, he pronounces his first name as Cenk, and it's
okay then.
Yeah, Cenk Unger. Yeah, I don't think that Canik makes a 1911, but I believe Tisas is distributed by EAA. I may have to look into that, but I believe it's one of the EAA sub brands, and EAA certainly makes a number of affordable 1911s.
I mean, I just quickly Googled Canik 1911, Janik, whatever, to see if I could get something, and I got a hit, but then it leads me to something else. So just wanted to check.
And maybe Tisas isn't there. Girasan is. So which is also, I believe, a Turkish company. Either way, there's a lot of guns coming out of Turkey.
So Weer'd, tell me how you feel about bayonets.
Oh, yeah, the shotgun that David was talking about that could take a bayonet. I have a soft spot for guns with bayonets. I think it just started off the fact that one of my first guns was my Mosin-Nagant M44, which is the carbine that has the integral bayonet. And I got an SKS not too long after that, again with an integral bayonet. And so I started just collecting bayonets for the various guns that I had bayonet lugs to it. And I've got to say that I've got a soft spot for bayonets, but no more of a soft spot than shotguns with bayonets, just because a shotgun by nature is a close quarters weapon, and a close quarters weapon with a big old knife on the end of it is a thing of beauty.
You weren't there for the very first Oddball B-Day shoot, and but I was, and I don't remember who it was. I think it was a Wellowent, but I'm not certain. He had it wasn't an authentic one. It was a clone. I think it was a Chinese clone of the World War I trench broom.
Mm-hmm.
And of course he had a bayonet for it. And of course he mounted it as I slam fired it. So, well, he mounted it before I slam fired it. That would be dangerous. But there's a picture floating around somewhere of me holding it after I've shot it, and I've got a big goofy grin, like, it must be mine.
There's I just posted in chat a picture of me. It's on my blog of me with my with my Mossberg 590, of which I have an M7 bayonet for. Mm-hmm. And yeah, that it's fun.
That's a very cunning T-shirt you have on.
Oh yes, yeah, it's my Jane Cobb T-shirt in that picture. Well, now comes the time of the show when we thank each and every one of our listeners. And a very special thanks to all our supporters on Patreon. To become a Patreon patron, go to patreon.com/Assorted Calibers podcast to sign up. Patrons get an early release of the podcast, plus bonus content like our hilarious blooper reels, the ACP film tracks, and the ACP mag dump.
Also, please remember to rate us on Apple Podcasts, subscribe to us on the platform of your choice, and share the show with your friends, both online and off.
You can get more from me at my blog, which is weerdworld.com. That's WEERD world.com. And hear me weekly on Handgun Radio on the Firearms Radio Network.
And you can get more from me at linktree/Aaron Paulette. That's linktree.ee/Aaron Paulette, all one word.
And thanks to Nate Spencer for our music.
I have an absolutely killer pun that will make sense to about 5% of the audience, if that.
We'll take it. Now I need to know.
I got to know. You're probably not going to want to put it here on the main show, but you can put it on the blooper reel.
Finest kind.
Okay. So, Weer'd, what do you call a wizard who specializes in resurrecting dead cats?
A necrophiliac?
No.
Okay.
A Necomancer.
Oh.
I am pleased and impressed that you got that. For everyone else who is scratching their heads, in Japanese, Nico, N-E-K-O, means cat.
Mm-hmm. I took a semester of Japanese. It was my foreign language credit in college.
I had forgotten about that.
Yeah, I was going on the felis.
You were going on the felis.
Yeah, necrophiliac with an F.
Oh, okay.
So you went Japanese, I went Latin. Either way, we aren't speaking English. Our languages are assorted, and so's our podcast.
Good night, everybody.
And I'm keeping that. That was good.
Sure.